Leader.
Thank you, Nick. Welcome everybody, and welcome those of you who are online and watching Cabinet. The agenda today is just one item, so we'll move swiftly to it. Before we do so, Nick, do we have any apologies for absence? No? Could we record that Councillor Brookert is currently in hospital and unable to join us? Do we have any declarations of interest? Then I'll move on to the only item on the agenda, the Economy, Employment and Skills Strategy, which Councillor Paul Griffiths is bringing to Cabinet today. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm pleased to bring to Cabinet, asking for your approval, strategy for economies, employment and skills. I hope you agree that it's a succinct read. Hope you enjoyed the read. And it's intended to be action orientated. I'm going to suggest, because of a book I've just been reading, that it is a strategy for work in our county. And the book I've been reading is that by John Cruddas, a Westminster Member of Parliament, and he called his book The Dignity of Work. And he was asking the reader to recognise, understand, sometimes celebrate the contribution that works brings to our lives. As individuals, we often define ourselves by our work. I'm a politician. Others might say they're a care worker. Others might say they're a carer. Their work is not marketed, but they define themselves by their work. As communities, we define our communities perhaps by the workplaces they're identified with. So Chepstow is often defined as being a port, a place where you build ships, bridges. As a society, we are often shaped by the relationships created by our workplaces, distribution of income, wealth, power that those workplaces create. And this strategy is about the way in which we shape the way we work within the county of Monmouthshire. I want to thank the many people who've contributed to developing this strategy. Back at the beginning of 2023, we had a small advisory group. There were councillors on that advisory group of several parties, employers, academics, city region officials. As a result of that advisory group, we commissioned a study. I call it a baseline study. It's an appendix to the report from the consultants Litchfield. Baseline study, it is an analysis of the economy as it currently is. I read it again this morning. The data fascinates me, and I know I'll be returning to it time and time again. I found it a very useful study. We took that data to discussion groups of local employers, testing their response, asking for their understanding of how we can build on the base that's been described. I learned so much from those discussion groups and from the contribution of those employers, and I very much thank them for the time and thought that they gave to this exercise. The strategy itself, which you're asked to approve today, was not written by the consultants. It was drafted by our own officers who built upon the data Litchfield provided and on the discussions with those who are engaged in our economy. I think it is all the better for the fact that it has been produced in-house, if you like, and I hope that those involved can take pride in their work. James Woodcock is here today, Hannah Jones, Kath Fallon, all involved in drafting that report. At each stage, they were able to touch base with their strategic director, Francis O'Brien, and indeed cabinet members in a more informal setting than this, and with myself. Nevertheless, there will be gaps, there will be failings in the report, and of course, they're all mine and not those who I've mentioned. That's why we have politicians. The report generated a full discussion in the Scrutiny Committee, and it has been reconsidered in the light of that discussion. So I thank all members of that committee and the chair for their contribution. The report tells us many important things about our economy. A phrase that I've used before, I used it in Scrutiny, in that I believe the Monmouthshire economy is distinctive in not being distinctive. By that I mean we have a huge strength in our diversity. We are a large number of different things. We have a large service economy, health, social care, professional services, education. Our food, hospitality, retail sectors are significant. Together, they contribute just under 20% of the whole of our economy. We have a growing manufacturing sector. As we look at the Lichfield data, we're probably the only area amongst all the comparative areas where our manufacturing sector, admittedly from a relatively small base, has actually been growing over the last decade. Agriculture and food processing are an important part of our economy, adding up to around 5% of the total. We have a large number of small businesses. We value them and we support them. But in our diverse economy, they stand alongside the bigger businesses that we equally value. It seems to me we are neither an economy of exclusively small business, nor indeed large businesses. The biggest 10% of our businesses have an annual turnover, having an annual turnover in excess of 1 million. If we take that group of businesses having a turnover over 1 million, that's about 10% of businesses. And they contribute about 75% of the total output. So big business is important to us just as much as the smaller businesses. In the strategy, you will have seen that we've chosen to illustrate the economy by providing not just data, but case studies of successful businesses in the county. And I thought that was important. Data is very important, but actually understanding the nature of those individual businesses, I hope, brings the strategy to life. And you'll see in those illustrations, large, small, manufacturing, professional, food processing are all part of those illustrations. The data shows us that we have a comparatively highly educated workforce with comparatively high productivity. And yet, and this might be counterintuitive, despite those advantages, our economic growth over the census period 2011 to 21 was the lowest amongst our comparator areas. If you look at the Lichfield data, the explanation, I believe, for that low growth becomes clear. We have not grown because there is a lack of economic capacity, spare capacity in the economy. We are operating at over 90% full employment amongst those who are available for work. We're operating at over 99% occupancy for our employment sites. The effect of that is that even though there is an appetite for existing businesses to grow and for other businesses to come into the Monmouthshire economy, they are held back by a lack of land and a lack of available labour. That was in the data, and it was confirmed in the conversations that we had with the existing businesses. They had this appetite for growth, but they felt constrained by the circumstances in which they found themselves. A key purpose of this economic strategy is to inform the replacement local development plan, which has been debated in this cabinet and in full council, which we will be publishing and consulting upon later this year. That local development plan will need to respond to this economic strategy, recognise the lack of usable employment land and provide for it. Informed by this strategy, I anticipate that the replacement local development plan will be proposing 45 hectares of further land for employment use. Nevertheless, we need to recognise that converting the available land into usable space requires investment. That investment is not always forthcoming. What we learned in our discussions was that there are occasions when land becomes available, but the return on the investment for converting that brownfield or indeed greenfield into usable space is in Monmouthshire sometimes too limited to justify the investment. That has a lot to do with the fact that our residential land values are high, but the final employment land values are not sufficient to bridge the gap between purchasing a piece of land and making it useful. I think we're going to have to work closely with the Cardiff Capital Region to recognise the development potential of Monmouthshire and to make the case on occasions for investment from that source into making usable for employment purposes. Crucial to growing the labour supply will be the increase in affordable housing, which will be proposed in the replacement local development plan. Only when young people can afford to live in Monmouthshire will we see local firms having access to a labour supply which allows them to thrive and grow. The strategy provides an analysis of our strengths and constraints. It shows the actions necessary to provide the capacity, land, labour, which will allow business to grow. The action plan is specific. It's going to be dynamic in the sense that we need to keep the engagement with business constantly monitoring and reviewing that action plan. The strategy is governed by its objectives to provide a fairer, more equal economy and an economy which impacts less on the natural world. I commend the strategy to Cabinet and I welcome questions on the draft strategy.
Thanks very much, Councillor Griffith. I'm actually really excited by this strategy. I love the breadth of it, the ambition of it, the recognition of how we are connected and need to be more connected with the hinterland as we see it, but actually Cardiff Capital Region, and how our connections are through the work that we do in county and go to, through our transport links, through our cultural links, and that we can build on that. And I really appreciated the analysis of where we are most likely to be able to make a difference to the economy of Monmouthshire, but also the lives of people within it. Not just in terms of growing jobs, but also in terms of that almost intangible but extremely important part of placemaking, this sense of being vibrant, of being busy, of wanting to be there, not just because of the beautiful countryside, because there are people, there are jobs, there are ideas, which makes it an interesting place to invest time and bring up families and to remain there afterwards. And I think you captured that really well. I don't know what the rest of Cabinet think. I can see Councillor Chandler wants to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Griffiths. I think, as the Leader said, this is commend the detail of the analysis, the data-driven nature of this strategy. I think it's really important that we've done that groundwork, that we've got that data, we're working on evidence, and the detail that's been put into it. So in terms of that, I think it's highly praiseworthy. I suppose the reason I'm coming in is looking at it from an environmental perspective, because the strategy does sort of refer to sustainability. It talks about sustainable growth and it talks about sustainable jobs in terms of the objectives. And while recognising, of course, that it's vital that any businesses and jobs are financially sustainable, I'm also think it's essential that they're also environmentally sustainable. And I suppose my question really is when our planet is facing that twin existential threat of climate change and the nature emergency, how can economic growth be truly sustainable, and how is this strategy driving us towards that environmental sustainability of our economy that we also need and our future generations need?
Thanks very much, Councillor Chandler. You've already warned me, I think, that dropping the word sustainable into a large number of sentences doesn't necessarily make the actions sustainable. We need to actually understand what we mean by that. I'll start in my response with the simple proposition that the economy we currently have is fundamentally unsustainable. And my argument for that is based initially on the demography. In the decade 2011 to 2021, our school population fell by 10%. Our working age population fell by 3.8%. But our retired population grew substantially. We're now in a situation where our retired population is 44% of our working age population. And that's projected over the next decade or so to grow to 60%. So if I want a definition of unsustainability, it strikes me that that demography of Monmouthshire is a good definition of an unsustainable county, community, and economy. So sustainable growth. One of the ways of creating sustainable growth is by attracting and retaining a younger population to live and work in the county. Attracting ever older people to retire into the county is not going to be sustainable. We need to get that younger working population into the county. And that means, and you referred me make the case in the numerous settings, sticking robustly to our objective of providing an increased supply of affordable, very often socially rented housing. That will increase the sustainability because it will correct that balance. And another point I want to make, and it's there in the data, 17% of our, 17,000 of working people in our county commute out of the county each day. That's 40% of the people in employment gain their employment out of the county. That's probably quite well understood. It's probably not as well understood that 14,000 commute into our county each day. So 34% of our jobs are taken by people commuting in. Now, in the 21st century, it seems to me inevitable that there is going to be movement in and out of administrative areas. The sort of factory town with the majority of people working in the town in one place, that's gone. But this rate of moving in and out, I think, is unnecessary and in the end unsustainable by the impact that it has on climate change, on our use of fuels. Can it be reversed or can it be resisted? The movement in is very often for relatively important work, very important work, but relatively low value work. Work in the care industry, work in hospitality. People working there cannot afford to live in Monmouthshire, and therefore we're attracting labour from other parts, particularly of South Wales. Again, if we can create that affordable housing, it may be possible for people working in Monmouthshire to find a home in Monmouthshire with less commuting in as a result. I would also set as an objective, and it's there in the report, if we can attract high value business into Monmouthshire, and that should be an objective, then there will be people who are currently commuting out, be it to Cardiff or Bristol or wherever. It should be our ambition that we can attract some of those workplaces, and home working will have a role to play in this, into the county itself. So it'll be a more sustainable economy if we can reduce those flows, commuter flows, both in and out of the county. Those changes, I think, could be specific to Monmouthshire. There is much else that we can do, which is very often equivalent to what all county councils will need to do. We need to make our workplaces, our patterns of work, less energy intensive. That I'm convinced can be done, but I think it'll require a prompting, nurturing role by the county council to work with business, to share good practice, to illustrate how that can be achieved. So I certainly haven't answered all your questions there, but hope I've put some ideas on the table. I don't know if you want to come back.
Yeah, no, thank you, Paul. I mean, absolutely right. I couldn't disagree with the word you've said. I mean, maybe I would, as time develops, want us to be able to go further in some of those areas. As you said, it's about reducing the energy impact of existing and new businesses, and the associated, as you said, commuting costs and other costs that, or impacts that go with those. But I think, you know, looking at some of the sectors we're trying to encourage as well, those sectors that can make best use of the circular economy, where they're both using reclaimed and recycled materials, as well as ensuring that their products and their waste is recycled and reused, as well as then looking at, you know, as we've said, as a key part of our economy is the food and agriculture sector. So the ongoing work that I know Councillor Maybe's doing with others to try and promote more sustainable farming and food practices, I think would also be good. So I think, you know, I don't disagree with what you said. I think it's a journey that we're on, and we just need to make sure that we keep pressing that angle of sustainability, as well as the sort of the demographic and the financial sustainability you're talking about. We need to keep promoting that at every opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. I think you're right to remind us of that. It is a key commitment in our community and corporate plan, and it's not something we intend to roll back on. Councillor Maybe, you want to come in?
Thank you. Yeah, really interesting discussion. I found it really helpful to hear this clear explanation of how the employment land and affordable housing linked to economic growth in Monmouthshire, and why we're as we are in relation to surrounding areas. This is incredibly helpful. I think you've already talked about it to some extent in your points about commuting. But I'd like to hear more. Perhaps you can elaborate a bit more on how you think our local transport plan can contribute to this employment strategy. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Catherine. As you know, we've been developing the economic strategy and the transport strategy in tandem, and discussions have taken place across the various teams involved. I think the Monmouthshire economy and the way in which I described its potential for growth will always require effective transport. Whilst we can aim to change the nature of commuter flows, there will always be a need for effective transport. Business will always require that people and supplies move in to the county, and people and their products move out. So no matter how much of a circular economy we have, localized the economy, that will never be the total economy, and we need that effective transport systems. And as is recognised in the draft local transport plan, there are challenges, problems with our existing transport infrastructure. I think everyone around the table has probably got the same inbox as me, the email inbox. People are frustrated by the congestion on our roads, be it the A40 in Monmouth or the A48 in Chepstow or wherever. And as the transport plan as drafted indicates, our bus services are not meeting the needs of people in our communities. So recognising all that, what I would like us also to do, and I tried to suggest it in parts of the strategy, and the strategy is there to inform our action, but it's also, I believe, there to be the foundation of an invitation to business to come to Monmouthshire. And as part of that invitation, what I also want to stress is the strengths in our transport infrastructure. Our inboxes don't reflect this, but they are there. I'm trying to get a social geographer to do more population analysis of the distribution of population in Monmouthshire, and I'll get there one day. But my estimate is, and I've shared this with you before, Catherine, that something over 60% of our population live within 2 miles of a train station. Chepstow, Caldicot, Abergavenny, and I'm including within that the Mega station, which we believe will soon arrive. Now that's a high proportion and compares very well with many other county areas throughout the United Kingdom, and I think we undersell that facility within our county, and we need to do more to put pressure on for more frequent trains, more capacity on our trains, and better priced trains. But there is a facility there that we need to acknowledge and celebrate. The active travel routes and our investment and intended investment in them are going to be crucial. Just as I calculate that a high proportion of our population live within actual or potential train stations, whilst we describe ourselves as a rural economy, in a very large part, we are an economy of small towns where an equivalent population is actually within a couple of miles of our town centres. And the more we can put in place those routes for walking, for taking a pram, for taking a mobility scooter, for taking a bicycle, the more we can do that, the better our transport infrastructure will be, the less congested our roads will be, and the better our economy will develop. And let's celebrate the roads we have. There's a sort of myth around the place that there are some group of politicians who are anti-road. Well, I don't think there's anyone on this council in that category. Our roads are crucial to our economy, and let's celebrate what we've got. We've got the major highway of the M4. We've got the major highway running from Newport through Usk, Raglan, Monmouth and on. And then from there to Abergavenny and on to the Heads of the Valley and West Wales. That's an extraordinary network of very often quite uncongested, functioning highway. And I wonder if in our global setting, we were marketing Monmouth as a place that within 2 or 3 hours, you can get to London, to Birmingham, to Manchester, to Cardiff, to Swansea, to Bristol, to Bath, then a global investor would find that an extraordinary location to be. And I wonder if we because of the negativity in our inbox, whether we do enough to celebrate the actual advantages of our road network. I'll leave it there for now. But again, you're working on this. You'll have ideas to contribute as well, Kat.
I absolutely agree with what you said. It's really nice to hear those positives, and I think obviously we worry a lot. We focus a lot on the problem areas because quite rightly we see it as our responsibility to find a solution to those. But yes, most of Monmouthshire's road network is actually quite a delight to drive on, and we totally recognise that the roads are our network. They are how we get around, and it's safe roads are as important for walkers and cyclists as they are for drivers. So yeah, it's very good to hear those positives, and I completely agree in terms of the quality of life that we have in Monmouthshire and in our Monmouthshire towns and in our rural villages. So thanks for that answer. That's great.
Thanks, Councillor Maybe. I think I'd add, and you've often said this yourself, that we need our roads because we are committed to public transport and buses, and buses need roads. I believe you had your hand up.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, can I just say thanks to everybody involved in bringing this really, really exciting strategy to us. It's got a really far-reaching vision and for the future for all of us in Monmouthshire. Councillor Griffiths, can I just ask you, can you elaborate a little bit more, please, on the importance that our towns bring to the economy of our county? I know throughout the report there are lots of mentions of towns. I just wonder if you could just give a little more detail on that, please.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, I think I've said before, I think as well as defining ourselves as a rural county, we would do well to define ourselves as a county of attractive small towns. They are jewels alongside the Wye Valley and the Esk Valley. They are the jewels of our county, historic, bustling, attractive towns of varying sizes. And look at those town economies and you will find that they are a host to a very large amount of economic activity and employment. So the data is in there for retail, hospitality, adding up to something like 20% of our economy. You'll find that overwhelmingly in those towns. Professional services in the office accommodation within our towns as often as not. Manufacturing. Go to somewhere like Monmouth. Nobody thinks of Monmouth for some reason as a manufacturing town, but some of our most successful, innovative manufacturers are there in what the residents want to tell me is a rural market town. We need to celebrate that. And more than just being a centre for the employment which is within the towns, I think that they are a magnet for investment and employment which may be outside of towns. And the reason I say that is that if you're trying to attract an investor from the rest of Wales, UK, the globe, they are looking for a place where they and their colleagues would enjoy the quality of life. So what they want is towns which look like, feel like places where they and their colleagues would want to live. So the more we can sustain the sociability, the vibrancy of our towns, the more likely we are to attract the investment which I think we are seeking and should be seeking. The danger is that should our towns decline, then everything I've said would say, well, our economy would decline with them, but that's not going to happen. The towns are not going to decline. And actually, I was thinking about this as I went into the town I live in today, Chepstow. I'm going to do a little bit of marketing for Chepstow. For today in Chepstow, the ex-former department store, which has been empty for so many years, has got several hundred people within it frequenting the businesses that are open today. Lounges open there today. It looks magnificent. You can eat, drink, and be merry in Chepstow, and I encourage you to go there.
Absolutely.
And that's important because I know something about the business. It originated in North Street in Bedminster in Bristol about 20 years ago. And I knew that street 20 years ago. It wasn't anything like it is at the moment. And what you got was investment in social spaces. People like lounges, a whole range. Everyone says you've got too many coffee bars. They're social spaces. Lounges started there. Numerous of them came into North Street. It resulted in the theatre space, the tobacco factory. And on the basis of the footfall of all that, you've now got every cheesemonger, costermonger, fishmonger coming into the town because of the sociability and the footfall that you've got. So you can create a virtual circle. Positive to you, if you all go to lounges, you can join that virtual circle. So there's a good future for our towns. It'll need the support of our town councils, of our civic society in all those towns, and the county council, but it's going to happen.
Thank you.
Wow. What sprung to my mind, Councillor Griffiths, was the report, it must be some 10 years ago, by Mary Portas, who made precisely that point about high streets, that forget about thinking in terms of bringing in high street stores or economic businesses, thinking about them as social spaces and how you encourage them to get those social connections and sociability if you are going to reinvigorate towns. And I think we've touched on that, haven't we? Councillor Callard, you've been waiting patiently here.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Griffiths, for bringing the report. You touched on it briefly in your introduction about these kind of two aspects that we really need to be able to deliver economic growth in the county, that being the space, the premises with which these businesses can function, but also the people that that we're going to need, and these businesses are going to need in order to sustain themselves. For my part, I know a lot of my friends growing up have now, they leave to go to university, they leave to a city and they end up getting jobs there and they work in the city. I continue to advocate, to move back into Monmouthshire because I think it's a wonderful place to grow up and to raise a family. But in terms of that kind of quality, our graduates, who have left our towns and gone off to university, how do we make sure that we've got that kind of highly skilled and quality workforce available to the businesses that that we're looking to attract in Monmouthshire?
In terms of you, I mean, you're closer to that age group than I am, Ben. So you can tell me what's going to bring those people back. I do meet people who've done their 10 years in Bristol, London, wherever, and then do come back, and they find it an attractive place at a later stage in life, perhaps when they're thinking of families or whatever. And some do find the job opportunities that they want. I think I'm going to. What I would fear at the moment is that they may not come back because the lifestyle may look attractive, but the employment opportunities that they've got in the bigger cities, they can't see replicated necessarily. And that comes back to beginning to understand what those attractive employment opportunities are and wondering what we need to do within the county to create them within our own settings. I can't see why they have to be city-based. I'd like to give that more thought and perhaps some discussion, and you can sort of bring those conversations you have back to me. We can think that through together.
I think, like you say, it is a challenge, although home working, has really made a difference to this. And I do know a lot of people who have essentially city-based jobs, but manage to do them from Monmouthshire because of flexible working arrangements. But yeah, I mean, I think we need to get out there. People will be surprised, just as you talk about Monmouth being a surprise of being a manufacturing hub. People don't always associate, Monmouth with manufacturing. I don't think a lot of young people realise actually the amazing opportunities that there are in Monmouthshire. Because the market is a little bit smaller, people often think they have to go out to, to find great roles in creative industries or charity sector or something like that, or indeed the manufacturing, which is where I work. So yeah, I think it would be really good, to try and get that message out there to people that there are all these great opportunities in Monmouthshire.
I think that's right. Actually, my own job, I moved to Abergavenny because I was 10 minutes away from a train station, and within 24 hours could be in Dhaka in Bangladesh, Islamabad in Pakistan, and it was a seamless journey, actually, which made it perfectly commutable for what was my then work. And I keep bumping into people who work internationally but base themselves in Monmouth. And if they have partners, their partners are also involved in flexible home working. And I think what's exciting about this strategy, it is thinking of all those elements you need in place, like broadband, access to markets, a sociable, vibrant town. So when you are at home, you can go there, or if you live in the town, just step out your door and meet people. I think it's thought that through in a visionary way, and that's for me what's really exciting about this strategy, and the fact that it is dovetailing with our other ambitions in a very coherent way. If you don't mind, Councillor Griffiths, I'm going to bring in Councillor John, who's got a couple of questions he'd like to ask.
Why? I don't quite understand why he would mind, but thank you, Leader. Firstly, can I say, just on behalf of the Conservative group, our thoughts are with Councillor Grocott, and we wish him well. Thank you for the discussion, and I also enjoyed the discussion that was quite thorough in Scrutiny Committee towards the end of last year. The strategy sets out a number of opportunities, doesn't it? But also some quite significant challenges, and one of those identified in the report is that. Welcome, Councillor Grocott. I was just saying our thoughts are with you, and we hope you're making a good recovery.
Hello, Martin. It's good you could join us.
I'm sorry it's taken me so long to break through the hospital firewall.
I thought you meant you were going to break it out then.
I've been tempted.
You've joined just in time, Martin, for the best bit of the meeting. Over the next 20 years, food and drink, one of Monmouthshire's biggest economic sectors, is forecast to decline by almost any other sector in the economy. That was very clear in the strategy. So what action is the council taking to arrest that decline? And also, how intensively is this administration lobbying Welsh Government to scrap the planned cuts to business rate relief, which is obviously a massive concern right now for hospitality businesses in Monmouthshire?
Yeah, I'll take the latter part of the question. We are in pretty regular dialogue with Welsh Government. We put in our formal response to the draft budget. The dialogue's continuing, and on the many fronts for that dialogue, we include the business rates issue. The point we make is that, like many parts of Wales, our businesses are in a competitive environment with a close border, and having a 70% discount. I'll give my local example in Thornbury, and a 40% discount in Chepstow is not going to help businesses on this side of the border. We make that case forcefully. What we must also do, and I've been working with our officers on this, there are a whole range of discounts. Some of them are in Wales and not in England, in fact, which are available to high street businesses in Wales. And I don't think we've done enough to market all of those. They're quite complex, they're quite difficult. So as well as lobbying for the continuation of the general discount, I think we've got a marketing job to do to explain what other discounts are available for small businesses beneath a certain size, that sort of thing. And we will work with our officers to do that. Like you, I'd spotted the trend. I'll come back to that in a moment, perhaps. But the data, the projected data on food processing, and I've asked James to have a look again at that data. So if I can ask James just to share the look that he's had, and then we can both reflect on that. James.
Thanks, Councillor Griffiths. So in terms of food and drink manufacturer, government data indicates that we've got 40 businesses within the county involved in food and drink processing, with approximately 1,400 employees across those businesses. So that's just under 4% of employee jobs in the county. Yes, the Experian data provided in the economic analysis forecasts that there will be a reduction of around 200 jobs between now and 2043. Although I would say that that is based on UK projections on UK averages. So it's really an average looking at what's expected to happen on the UK, and it doesn't take account of local circumstances or mitigating factors. That said, the manufacture of food and drink ranks as a second highest sector in Monmouthshire in terms of the value generated in the production of goods, and is forecast to grow quite significantly. It's amongst the top 5 in terms of the forecast growth between now and 2043. So there are some encouraging signs there, definitely. So that's kind of the optimism and expectations.
So thank you very much, James. So what I've taken from that is that the data in the Lichfield analysis on this is a warning shot. It tells us what would happen to Monmouthshire if we followed the existing UK trend, which is for a decline in this form of economic activity. I suggest that it has to be our objective not to follow that trend. We treat it as a warning shot, and we take steps to find opportunities for those firms within the county. In parallel to the economic strategy, there's work going on with a food strategy, and I think that food strategy needs to be informed by that warning shot that if we do nothing, if we don't take countervailing measures and just follow a national trend, then there will be a backward move for these industries, and that's something we need to work against. Everything I've seen about our developing food strategy shows that we want to localise, and insofar as we localise, that is the avenue for resisting that national trend, and we have a rare opportunity to do that in a county like Monmouthshire. I know, Mary-Anne, you're working on the food strategy. I don't know if you want to.
I do, actually. Cabinet will see, and I think you'll have seen also, Councillor John, that we have integrated some of what we want to do around food and hospitality within this strategy. So it will read across, but also reinforce what we want to do on food and improving the local economy for food processing and allied tourism and hospitality with this area of the economy. Two things which are very clear, I think, in this strategy is the partners that we need to work with and that we can't do it on our own. And the recent partnership Marches Forward, which was inaugurated last year, early September, we have taken over heading the theme on food development and the economy, because we recognise it's absolutely essential that we leverage our influence wherever we can. You'll know traditionally, Councillor John, that Monmouthshire has been Deputy Chair of Cardiff Capital Region, and we, along with Cardiff, hold the portfolio on research and innovation, and also a co-head of the Food Challenge Fund, which was a 2.1 million investment to start looking at different ways to sustainable growth in the food sense, but also looking at different ways we can support the food economy. And that comes back to Councillor Griffiths' point that unless we're aware of the dangers in front of us and the potential threats and start acting now, then it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. What we hope, it comes back to that holistic approach, which we have been really pushing through the community and corporate plan. What we hope through our local transport plan, through the RLDP, through this economic strategy and through the food strategy, that we'll have those dovetailing of activities where staff are working with each other rather than in silos to reach our objectives. That makes sense? I think it does. Do you want to come back, Councillor John?
Yeah, can I just welcome the point about any additional marketing or helping to raise awareness amongst businesses of support that is out there, because I think it's particularly a nervous time for the hospitality industry. So absolutely support that. And I also think you were right, Councillor Griffiths, in what you were saying about customers having a choice, and my ward, similarly to yours, is right on the border. And in fact, I can think of one hospitality business right on the River Wye where you can see another pub across the water. It was one of those pubs that came to public attention during the pandemic, when one side of the river pubs were allowed to open and not on the other. And customers are going to have a choice as to where they go, and that sense of fairness that businesses on one side are going to be penalised, it does feel very unfair. So if the council can make the strongest possible representations on that, we would be grateful. My second question changes tack a little bit. I'd like to know what progress the council has made in identifying funding to deliver on those placemaking plans that have already been agreed, appreciating that there are others referenced in the document that are going to be forthcoming in the near future.
Yeah, certainly. It's good news, but delayed news. It has been delayed. You'll recall Welsh Government had, like ourselves, had to look at its in-year pressures and regroup in year, and that meant that the availability of the funding for the placemaking grants was uncertain. It's now been clarified that funding is available, and on that basis we are working with Monmouth, Abergavenny, Mega Town councils to initiate the invitation to tender for a consultant to work with those councils on those placemaking plans. So it's frustrating that it's been delayed the best part of 6 months, but we're now at the point of inviting those tenders. So I'm very pleased about that. I think it's going to be an exciting time for those towns. I mean, I hope we haven't lost the momentum. We sort of tried to build up an enthusiasm for the project. We need to go back out and do that now with the invitation to tender. They will be part of the appointment process. This is not being done to them. They'll choose which consultant they will work with. That'll be the trigger for the community engagement, the business engagement that will need to take place in those towns to shape their own futures. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor John. I don't think we have any other questions from Cabinet.
What about your education one?
All right. It's a good point, though. Well, Councillor Callard was talking about how we attract young people in and keep them here. It's also a question, isn't it? Because the strategy is very clear. We need high quality jobs. We need high value jobs. We need jobs which have the flexibility to work at home, as well as when they need to be connected, they can be. So how do we ensure that we have got the right skills, the educational attainment in place, the right quantity and quality? Because we are ambitious on this, aren't we? The number of jobs we want.
Yeah. So Hannah has been working on the skills part of the report. And perhaps Hannah, if you can explain those parts of the strategy which involved our objectives for ensuring the right skills are available.
Okay, thank you, Leader and Councillor. I'm quite excited about this journey, and everything you've said, Leader, in terms of, you know, we need to attract a younger workforce, highly skilled workforce. We're having good engagement with our secondary schools currently, looking at those pathways where Councillor Callard spoke when young people leave Monmouthshire for university is higher in Monmouthshire compared to other parts of Wales. And those people, as we've talked about, don't come back to Monmouthshire. So we've had dialogue with our businesses through the strategy, some really purposeful conversations around we would like a younger workforce. We would like to invest in our young people in taking them through that journey from apprenticeship level 2, level 3 to degree and beyond. And there's a real appetite from our larger businesses in Monmouthshire to invest in a younger workforce, invest in those opportunities, in developing those skills going forward. We also got to look at those that Monmouthshire, we talked about earlier, is the challenge of a declining workforce. And we spoke earlier around affordable housing, attracting people into Monmouthshire, but also those people in Monmouthshire that still want to continue work and look to diverse. You know, anecdotally, we've spoke around there's a significant number of older people in Monmouthshire starting their own business, looking into different pathways in their working life journey at the moment. And Councillor Griffiths alluded to earlier around the strategy and the diversity of the strategy, the diversity of our population. You know, we're excited, particularly around, and we explored it in scrutiny, about developing a skills centre in Monmouthshire. What's that going to look like? You know, we haven't got a university presence in Monmouthshire. You know, how can we offer that higher skill development? But at the same time, speaking to our businesses, they're going through a transformation around retraining and upskilling as well. You know, we spoke earlier around sustainable jobs, we spoke about greener and all those changes in the economy as well. So we're particularly excited about some of the conversations we're having at the moment with our stakeholders. We met the Welsh Government yesterday and looking at that journey in developing our workforce for the future. So I don't know if that answers some of the points you were picking up on, really.
It does, actually. I think the Skills Centre is very exciting. I think we know. I was talking to the Vice-Chancellor of Cardiff University just before Christmas about thinking differently about how you deliver tertiary education in the next 15 to 20 years, and it not being based in one location, and it not necessarily being a physical place where you learn from. And that's really exciting for a place like Monmouthshire, where as much as we want to attract people in, I would hope we can keep some of our talent who can stay here, who can be skilled here and can be educated here. And one of the exciting developments again at late end of last year was South East Wales being identified as an investment zone. We're part of that through CCR. we're in a position to help shape what that looks like. And for me, and Councillor Griffiths and I have had quite a lot of conversations about this, it's investing in our young people, in our geography, in those skills, in apprenticeships, in feeling there's a pathway which takes us from school through to whatever skills and education is needed for high value jobs, which doesn't take you out the region, doesn't necessarily take you out of Monmouthshire. So yes, thanks, Hannah. So I don't think there are any other questions, unless I've got one hiding up my sleeve and I didn't realise. But I don't think so. So shall we move into recommendations, Cabinet? There's just two. 2.1, that we approve the Economy, Employment and Skills Strategy and Action Plan, which addresses the challenges and opportunities for sustainable, inclusive economic growth in Monmouthshire. Can we just have a nod or a show of hands? Yeah, I think that's approved. The second, 2.2, that we agree that the Economy, Employment and Skills Strategy and Action Plan is delivered by service area officers and managers and coordinated by the Head of Economy, Employment and Skills, so that we get that strategic ownership and delivery across all our services. We agree, Cabinet? Thank you very much. I think this has been a really stimulating conversation this evening. So thank you very much, Councillor Griffiths and Hannah and James, and everyone in the team that has delivered what I found a really interesting, easy and exciting read, and a feeling as well, which is far more important than the document, that we can deliver and that we are committed to deliver. And that's what's exciting. Martin, you had your hand up. Was that just to show you wanted to vote? Okay.
Even though you're on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute. You're on Martin anyway. You're on mute, Martin. We're just so happy to see you here.
No, that was me just voting to accept what you were saying. My apologies. I'm struggling to get into this meeting at all tonight. I'm actually struggling to keep my brain together as well, but that's another matter. That's 11 days in the Grange.
We're happy to see you, actually. And some of us.
I think it's taken a record in being the first person ever to appear in Cabinet in a dressing gown. And I'm not going to put a shirt and tie on, but under here I'm all wired up, so they can tell immediately if my heart has stopped. It's hard by just looking at me.
No, you don't know what we're wearing under the waist, Martin, so I could have my pyjamas on here, you see.
You should, isn't it?
You look quite ill.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Cheers. Bye.
I'm just off to the nightclub.